You know, sometimes family can push you so far that you finally snap. And for me, that breaking point was when my own parents and sister demanded I give up my entire life. My weekends, my money, my peace. All so they could relax. What would you do when your family treats you like a walking ATM and free babysitter? Okay, so picture this. I'm Anna, 22, fresh out of college with a business degree, and completely thrilled to finally be independent. Only, life had other plans. Turns out, the job hunt was quick. Landed a sweet gig at Davidson Marketing within a week. Good salary, promising bonuses. I was on top of the world. But then, that familiar sinking feeling hit. I was still living at my parents' house. That evening, over Mom's meatloaf, I shared my exciting news. My plan. Stay a few more months, save up, then get my own apartment. The clinking of forks stopped. Mom and Dad exchanged that look. The one that always spelled trouble. Mom put down her fork. Moving out, Anna? You know I can only work part-time because of my back. Dad cleared his throat. And things aren't great at the plant, rumors of layoffs. Then Mom, in her softest voice. We could really use your help with the bills, honey. And you wouldn't have to pay rent here. It just makes more sense, doesn't it? I just stared at my half-eaten meatloaf, a knot forming in my stomach. Trapped. They had a point, kind of. And they were my parents. So, I guess I could stay longer. Life settled into a predictable rhythm. Work, home, pay the bills. Mom always made sure dinner was on the table. It was manageable. Until last weekend. That's when my sister, Sarah, showed up with her husband, Mike, and their kids, Emma and Lucas. And just like that, my parents flipped a switch. Oh, my precious angels. Mom cooed, scooping up 4-year-old Emma, while Dad swung Lucas onto his shoulders. Sarah, darling, you look wonderful. How's everything going? Tell us all about it. I stood there in the doorway, invisible, watching them fawn over their eldest daughter and her perfect little family. They hung on her every word, asking about her garden, Lucas's new words, her book club. That level of interest. They'd never shown it for me. Not when I made Dean's List. Not when I won the business school's leadership award. Anna, be a dear and put on some coffee. Mom called over her shoulder, not even looking my way, bouncing Lucas on her knee. Standing in that kitchen, listening to their laughter from the living room, a wave of familiar resentment washed over me. It had always been this way. Sarah, 7 years my senior, was the star. I was just supporting cast. I remembered being 11, showing Mom my straight-A report card. She barely glanced. That's nice, Anna, she'd said absently, waving me away before turning back to Sarah's college applications. Sarah, honey, which universities are your top choices? Every dinner, every conversation, revolved around Sarah. Her grades, her clubs, her college prep. I'd sit there, quietly eating my peas, while Mom and Dad hung on her every word about AP classes and college tours. Then, Sarah got into Brighton University. I was 11, but I remember that dinner like yesterday. We're so proud of you, sweetheart. Mom exclaimed, tears in her eyes. We'll make it work, won't we, Robert? Dad nodded solemnly. We'll take out a student loan. Our Sarah deserves the best education possible. A week after she left, they sat me down. Anna, Dad said, voice serious. We need to tighten our belts for a while. The loan payments and Sarah's college expenses are significant. That's when things really changed. My classmates got new phones every year. I kept my old flip phone until it literally fell apart. New clothes. Thrift stores. Christmas gifts. Socks and school supplies. But they never forgot to send Sarah money. Your sister needs to focus on her studies, Mom would say, writing another check. We can't let her feel stressed about money. I learned my lesson early. At 15, I joined every club, every academic competition. I studied until my hands cramped, not just for good grades, but for perfect ones. because I knew there'd be no student loans for me. It paid off. Full scholarship to State University. I still remember the look of pure relief on my parents' faces. They wouldn't have to spend a dime. Meanwhile, Sarah graduated, got a job, married Mike, her college sweetheart. Within 2 years, Emma and Lucas arrived. My parents were over the moon. Their perfect daughter had created a perfect family. Now, every monthly visit became the same routine. Sarah and Mike would arrive, and before I could even say hello, Sarah would be planning her weekend. "Anna, you'll watch Emma and Lucas while we go shopping, right?" she'd say, not really asking. Mike and I hardly get any alone time. The first few times, I tried to suggest our parents could watch them. "Oh, honey," Mom would say, rubbing her back. "You know it's hard for me to keep up with young children. And your father needs his rest on weekends." So, there I was. Another Saturday. Watching Frozen for the 100th time with Emma, while Lucas tried to color on my bedroom walls. Sarah and Mike were off having lunch with friends. My parents were puttering in the garden, occasionally peeking in to ask if I needed anything, as if they were doing me a favor. I tried to console myself. It was just one weekend a month. Just one. Being the free, reliable babysitter while everyone else lived their lives. A year passed in this monthly rhythm of babysitting and bills. I'd almost gotten used to it. Almost. Then came the phone call that would turn my already complicated life completely upside down. I was doing dishes after dinner when Mom's phone rang. From the kitchen, I could hear her surprised. "Sarah." "Oh, sweetheart, don't cry. Tell me what happened." Through sobs, Sarah explained that Mike's company had gone bankrupt. No warning. They couldn't afford rent, had no savings. Could we maybe stay with you for a while?" Sarah's voice was so loud I heard it clearly. "Of course you can," Mom exclaimed, without a moment's hesitation. "We'll make room." My stomach dropped. I stepped forward, clearing my throat. If they're moving in, maybe this would be a good time for me to get my own apartment. You'd think I'd suggested burning down the house. Mom looked at me like I'd lost my mind. "Anna, don't be ridiculous. There's plenty of room for everyone." "We're family," Dad said firmly. "We stick together during hard times." They arrived the following weekend with 3 cars full of belongings. I spent Saturday morning moving my things into what used to be our storage room. The smallest bedroom, barely big enough for a twin bed and a dresser. My old room, twice the size, became the kids' nursery. Because the children need space to play. Emma, now 5, and 3-year-old Lucas, treated the entire house like their personal playground. They ran up and down the hallways, screaming and laughing, while Sarah watched TV at full volume or had long, loud phone conversations with her friends about how difficult this transition was for her. "Emma, Lucas, keep it down," I'd yell when they burst into my room for the 10th time, scattering my work papers everywhere. "They're just playing, Anna," Sarah would say dismissively, not even looking up from her phone. "Don't be such a grouch." After work, all I wanted was to relax. Read a book. Watch something on my laptop. Instead, I got Baby Shark on repeat through the thin walls, punctuated by the constant thump of little feet and Sarah's loud laughter at whatever show she was watching downstairs. Mike spent his days supposedly job hunting, but mostly he just sat at the kitchen table, scrolling his phone with a worried expression. "The job market's tough right now," he'd say. "But I'm sure something will come up soon." I lay in my tiny bed each night, staring at the ceiling, listening to the chaos that had become my home, wondering how I'd let myself get trapped. But every time I thought about bringing up moving out again, I remembered my parents' reaction and kept quiet. The first utility bill after Sarah's family moved in hit me like a punch to the gut. I stood in the kitchen, staring at numbers almost double what I usually paid. The water bill alone had skyrocketed, not to mention electricity and heating. Looking at my bank account, I realized my dreams of saving for my own place were quickly evaporating. That evening at dinner, I decided to speak up. "So, about the utility bills," I started, pushing my peas around the plate. They've doubled since last month. I can't keep covering all of them by myself anymore. It's taking almost my entire salary. Sarah's fork clattered against her plate. Are you seriously complaining about money right now? When Mike and I have lost everything. I'm not complaining, I just think we need to figure out a fair way to. I can't believe how selfish you're being. Sarah's voice rose. We're going through the hardest time of our lives, and all you care about is money. Sarah's right, Anna. Mom jumped in. Family helps family. That's what we do. Dad nodded solemnly. Your sister and Mike need our support right now. This isn't the time to be counting pennies. I looked down at my plate, swallowing the words I really wanted to say. Fine. Never mind. A week later, Mike finally got a job at an insurance company. It paid less, but at least it was something. I thought, maybe things will start getting better. I was wrong. It's so hard being alone with the kids all day, Sarah started complaining almost immediately. Mike leaves at 8 and doesn't get back until 6. I never get a break. Then it started. Small requests at first. Anna, could you watch the kids for an hour while I run to the store? Anna, would you mind keeping an eye on them while I take a shower? Before I knew it, these small favors had snowballed into something much bigger. I'd come home from work to find Sarah already dressed up to go out. Oh good, you're home, she'd say, grabbing her purse. Mike and I are meeting friends for dinner. Emma and Lucas already had their snack, but they'll need dinner in an hour. We'll be back by 10. Weekends became my personal nightmare. Sarah and Mike would casually announce their plans on Friday evening. A shopping trip, lunch with friends, a movie date. Leaving me with the kids for hours. Mom and Dad conveniently started visiting relatives more often, usually disappearing right after Sarah and Mike left. So there I'd be, weekend after weekend, trying to keep Emma from drawing on the walls while Lucas had another tantrum because I cut a sandwich the wrong way. I'd spend my Saturdays cleaning up toys, making mac and cheese, and watching endless repeats of children's movies. By Sunday night, I'd be exhausted, my house would be a mess, and I'd still need to cook dinner for everyone. One evening, after a particularly exhausting weekend of childcare, I finally worked up the courage to say something at dinner. I need to talk to you all, I said, setting down my fork. I'm really tired. This situation with the childcare isn't working for me. Sarah's head snapped up, her eyes narrowing. What do you mean, isn't working? Are you saying you don't want to spend time with your own nephews? Mom reached over and patted Sarah's hand. Don't worry, honey. This is actually good practice for Anna. She'll need to know how to handle children when she becomes a mother herself someday. Think of it as training. And just like that, they went back to their usual dinner conversation. Sarah talking about her day. Mom and Dad hanging on her every word. Mike nodding along. I sat there invisible once again, pushing food around my plate. Nothing changed after that conversation. If anything, it got worse. Sarah and Mike seemed to take my complaint as a challenge, finding even more reasons to go out. They'd be waiting by the door when I got home from work, car keys in hand. We're meeting friends at that new restaurant downtown, they'd say, already halfway out the door. Kids have had their snack. Thanks, Anna. Weekends became something I dreaded. I'd wake up on Saturday mornings with a knot in my stomach, knowing I'd spend the next 2 days watching Paw Patrol and mediating sibling fights while Sarah and Mike lived their best lives. Then came a Wednesday that changed everything. I was at my desk at work, trying to focus on a marketing report despite my exhaustion, when my friend Rachel stopped by my cubicle. Hey, want to do something fun this weekend? She asked, perching on the edge of my desk. A bunch of us are going to the Pine Ridge Ski Resort. Just a quick weekend getaway. Leave Saturday morning, come back Sunday night. The slopes are supposed to be perfect. For the first time in months, I felt a spark of genuine excitement. Friday evening, I was in my tiny bedroom, packing my duffel bag, actually feeling happy about an upcoming weekend for once. I had just folded my warmest sweater when Sarah appeared in my doorway. "What are you doing?" she asked, eyeing my half-packed bag. "Packing for a ski trip," I replied, rolling up my thermal socks. "Going to Pine Ridge with some friends from work." Sarah's face darkened. "You need to cancel." I looked up, startled by her tone. "What? Why would I do that?" "Because," she said, crossing her arms, "Mike and I are going to Aunt Linda's 60th birthday party in Millbury this weekend. Mom and Dad are coming too. You need to stay here with Emma and Lucas." I couldn't help but laugh. Actually, laugh out loud at the sheer audacity of it all. "You're joking, right?" I said, continuing to fold my ski pants. "You can't seriously expect me to cancel my plans because you didn't bother to tell me about yours?" Sarah's face turned bright red. "This isn't funny, Anna. You're being completely unreasonable." "No, what's unreasonable is assuming I'll drop everything at a moment's notice to be your personal babysitter again." Sarah's mouth fell open. She stood there for a moment, sputtering, before turning on her heel and storming out of my room. "Mom, Dad, Mike." I could hear her shouting down the hallway. "You won't believe what Anna's doing." I kept packing, my hands shaking slightly with anger. The thundering of footsteps announced the arrival of the cavalry. My tiny room suddenly felt even smaller as Sarah, Mike, and my parents crowded in. Mom's face was already set in that disappointed expression I knew so well. "What's this about you going skiing?" she demanded, hands on her hips. "Exactly what it sounds like," I replied, zipping up my duffel bag. "I'm going to Pine Ridge Resort with my friends for the weekend." "But you can't," Sarah exclaimed. "We have Aunt Linda's party." "No, you have Aunt Linda's party," I corrected her. I stopped what I was doing and turned to face them all. Why am I just hearing about this party now? Why wasn't I included in any of the planning? Mom hesitated, looking uncomfortable for the first time. Sarah jumped in, her voice dripping with condescension. "We all discussed it and decided this would work best for everyone. We go to the party, you watch the kids. It's the most logical arrangement." "You all discussed it," I repeated slowly, "without me, and decided what I would be doing with my weekend? How convenient." "Well, you can't exactly bring small children to a sophisticated party," Sarah sniffed. "Aunt Linda specifically said no kids." I shouldered my duffel bag. "Sounds like a you problem." "They're your kids, Sarah. Figure it out. What's that supposed to mean?" Mike finally spoke up, frowning. "It means exactly what it sounds like. I have plans. I'm going skiing. Your children are your responsibility, not mine. If you can't bring them to the party, either don't go or hire a babysitter." "A babysitter?" Sarah shrieked. "With what money?" Again, not my problem. I turned to face them all, suddenly feeling stronger than I had in months, maybe years. "Let me make this perfectly clear. I am going skiing tomorrow. I am done being your free, convenient babysitter. I'm done having my weekends hijacked, my plans ignored, and my life treated like it doesn't matter. If you need childcare, Sarah, that's your responsibility as a parent. Stop assuming I'll always be there to pick up your slack." The silence that followed was deafening. They all stared at me as if I'd suddenly started speaking in tongues. Sarah's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Mom looked like she'd been slapped. Dad seemed to be trying to disappear into the doorframe. And Mike. Mike just stood there with that same confused expression he'd been wearing since his company went bankrupt. The moment of shocked silence didn't last long. Sarah's face crumpled, and she burst into theatrical sobs, covering her face with her hands. Mike muttered something that sounded distinctly like ungrateful under his breath. "How dare you?" Mom's voice rose. "After everything we've done for you, you're being completely irresponsible. Selfish. Absolutely selfish." Dad chimed in, shaking his head. I stood there, my duffel bag still over my shoulder, watching my family turn into a Greek chorus of accusations. The words washed over me: selfish, ungrateful, inconsiderate, immature. Each one meant to cut deep, to put me back in my place. Then Mom delivered what she clearly thought would be the knockout blow. If you walk out that door tomorrow, don't bother coming back to this house. To everyone's surprise, I burst out laughing. Not a nervous giggle, but a full, genuine laugh. They all stared at me as if I'd lost my mind. You know what's funny? I said, wiping tears from my eyes. I've been dreaming about moving out of this house for months. I just didn't have the courage to do it. But here you are, giving me the perfect excuse. So, thank you, Mom. Get out, Sarah shrieked, her fake sobs forgotten in her rage. Just get out. Gladly. I pulled out my phone and dialed Rachel's number, putting it on speaker just to make a point. Hey, Rach. Sorry to call so late, but is that offer to crash at your place still good? Not just for after skiing, but maybe for a few days. Of course. Rachel's cheerful voice filled the room. I have a spare room. Want to come over now? That would be perfect, I said, a smile spreading across my face. I'll be there in 20 minutes. I spent the next 15 minutes gathering everything I could fit in my car. Clothes, important documents, personal items. They watched from various doorways as I made trips up and down the stairs, as if they couldn't quite believe I was really doing it. When I had loaded the last box, I walked into the living room where they had all gathered. Oh, one more thing, I said, my voice steady. Since I won't be living here anymore, I won't be paying any of the bills either. You'll need to figure out how to support yourselves. Mom's face went pale. But the utilities. The groceries. Not my problem anymore, I said, echoing my words from earlier. I turned and walked out the front door, ignoring Mom's suddenly panicked calls behind me. The drive to Rachel's place was a blur of adrenaline and relief. My phone kept lighting up with calls and messages, angry texts from Sarah, guilt-tripping novels from Mom, stern disappointments from Dad. I ignored them all. The next morning, Rachel and I drove to Pine Ridge Resort as planned. For the first time in what felt like forever, I spent a weekend doing exactly what I wanted to do. We skied. We laughed. We had hot chocolate by the fire. And not once did I have to worry about anyone else's children or problems. When we got back Sunday night, I opened my laptop and started searching for apartments. With my salary no longer going to support my family, I could actually afford a decent place. By Wednesday, I had found a small but bright one-bedroom apartment in a nice area of town, just a 15-minute drive from my office. My first week in my new apartment was like learning to breathe again. Every morning, I woke up to blessed silence. No screaming children. No blaring TV. No guilt-inducing sighs from my mother. I could make coffee and drink it while it was still hot. I could spend my evenings reading or watching whatever I wanted on Netflix. The messages kept coming, though. I didn't answer the calls, but I couldn't help reading the texts. They followed a predictable pattern. Mom, how could you abandon your family like this? We need you. Sarah, you're so selfish. The kids keep asking where Aunt Anna is. Dad, your mother is very upset. You need to make this right. The messages cycled between guilt trips and anger, accusations and pleas. I read them all, but responded to none. My silence seemed to drive them even crazier. They weren't used to not having power over me. After a week of this, I was sitting on my new couch when Mom's number flashed on my phone again. This time, I decided to answer. Anna. Finally. Mom's voice was sharp. I can't believe you ruined our entire weekend. Aunt Linda's party was completely disrupted because of your selfish behavior. Sarah and Mike couldn't come because you refused to watch the children and... Stop. My voice was quiet, but firm. Just stop. I'm done with this, Mom. I'm done being treated like a servant in my own home. I'm done being expected to sacrifice everything. My time, my money, my life, for everyone else's convenience. I'm done being the family ATM and free babysitter while being treated like I don't matter. There was a long pause on the other end. When Mom spoke again, her voice had changed to that wheedling tone I knew so well. Honey, I know things haven't been perfect, but we're family. We need you. The bills this month, we're struggling without your help. No, Mom. I'm done. Maybe someday we can have a relationship again, but it will be on equal terms. No more manipulation. No more guilt trips. No more treating me like a walking wallet or free childcare service. Until then, I need space to live my own life. I hung up and immediately blocked her number. Then I went through my phone and blocked them all. Mom, Dad, Sarah, even Mike. I blocked them on social media too. It felt both terrifying and liberating, like cutting anchor lines I hadn't even realized were holding me down. Maybe someday I'll be ready to have my family back in my life. Maybe with enough time and distance, we can build something new, something healthier, with boundaries and respect. Or maybe we won't. Either way, I'm done sacrificing my own happiness and well-being to meet their endless demands. So, what do you think? Was I too harsh, or did I do exactly what I needed to do? Have you ever had to draw a line in the sand with family like this? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I really want to know.